Bullies try to throw a student off the second floor of the school. Big mistake. They failed and got beaten up instead. Miguel Alvarez hunched his shoulders and kept his eyes fixed on the cracked linoleum floor as he navigated the crowded hallway of Westridge High School. At 15, he was shorter than most boys his age, with a slight frame that made him appear even younger. His olive skin was marred by acne scars, and his thick glasses constantly slid down his nose. As the new kid who had arrived just 3 weeks ago from Puerto Rico, his heavily accented English made him an easy target. What nobody at Westridge knew was that back in San Juan, Miguel had trained in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu since he was 6 years old. His father, a former professional fighter, had insisted that his son learn to defend himself in their rough neighborhood. By 13, Miguel had earned his blue belt and had begun competing in youth tournaments across the island, winning most of them. His technique was flawless, his instincts razor-sharp, but his father had always emphasized one thing: fighting is only for when you have no other choice. A true warrior avoids unnecessary battles. Those words echoed in Miguel's mind each time he encountered Damon Reynolds and his crew. Damon was a senior, the star quarterback with broad shoulders, a square jaw, and piercing blue eyes that turned cold whenever they landed on Miguel. He always had his 2 lieutenants with him, Jason Marks, a wiry basketball player with a cruel laugh, and Tyler Green, a hulking wrestling team captain whose knuckles were perpetually bruised. "Hey, look who it is," Damon sneered as Miguel tried to slip past them toward his locker. "It's Miguelito!" He pronounced the name with an exaggerated accent that made Jason and Tyler snicker. Miguel felt his cheeks burn but kept moving. "Just get through today. Just get through this week. Things will get better eventually. You promised Dad no fighting unless it's absolutely necessary. I'm talking to you, immigrant," Damon called louder, grabbing Miguel's backpack and jerking him backward. "Don't you have manners where you come from?" Around them, other students slowed to watch, some with discomfort in their eyes, others with the eager anticipation of entertainment. A few teachers glanced their way and then conveniently found elsewhere to be. Miguel had quickly learned that Damon's father was the school board president and largest donor to the athletic department. The invisible shield of privilege protected him from consequences. "Please let go," Miguel said quietly, the words coming out with the accent he was desperately trying to minimize. Damon mimicked him in a high-pitched voice. "Please let go," he repeated, drawing out each syllable. Then he shoved Miguel hard against the lockers. "Learn to speak English properly if you're going to be here." Miguel felt the familiar surge of adrenaline, the combat instinct his body had been trained to access instantly. He could have easily executed a sweep that would have put Damon on his back in seconds. Instead, he steadied himself, readjusted his glasses and walked away, while Damon's laughter followed him down the hall. This had become his daily routine at Westridge: arrive early to avoid the morning ambush, eat lunch in a bathroom stall or empty classroom, and leave as quickly as possible when the final bell rang. But they always found him eventually. The cafeteria was particularly treacherous territory. Miguel had learned to grab his food and find the far corner table where a few other social outcasts sat. Ellie Chen, a quiet girl who always had her nose in a fantasy novel, and Marcus Washington, a skinny freshman who played chess during lunch and never spoke above a whisper. "They're looking at you again," Marcus muttered without looking up from his chess pieces. Miguel didn't need to turn around to know who they were. He could feel Damon's eyes boring into his back. He took another bite of his sandwich and tried to focus on Ellie's explanation of the book she was reading. So then the main character discovers he's actually... Ellie's words were cut short by a milk carton splattering across their table, drenching Miguel's clothes and Ellie's book. "Oops," Damon said, standing over them with an exaggerated expression of concern. "My hand slipped. Maybe where you come from, they don't teach you how to sit at a table properly." He leaned in closer to Miguel. "Or maybe they don't have tables at all. Do you eat on the floor at home, Miguelito?" Miguel felt something tighten in his chest. He counted to 10 in his head the way his father had taught him. Breathe in control, breathe out anger, breathe in calm, breathe out fear. He grabbed some napkins and started cleaning up the mess, helping Ellie dry her book. "Nothing to say?" Damon pressed, clearly disappointed by the lack of reaction. "Come on, at least try to defend yourself. It's pathetic." Miguel finally looked up, meeting Damon's eyes. Something in his steady gaze must have unnerved the bully, because Damon's smirk faltered for just a moment. Then he recovered, leaning down, to whisper, "This isn't over," before walking away with Jason and Tyler flanking him. The physical education class was another daily torment. Coach Matthews, a former linebacker with a perpetual scowl, seemed to have a particular dislike for students who weren't athletically inclined. or at least who didn't appear to be. When Miguel deliberately underperformed to avoid drawing attention, the coach's disdain was palpable. "Alvarez, you run like my grandmother, and she's been dead for 10 years, he bellowed, as Miguel deliberately paced himself at the back of the group during laps. The locker room after gym class was the worst. No teachers, no supervision, just rows of metal lockers and tiled floors where sounds echoed and evidence of accidents could be quickly washed away. "Strip, Miguelito," Damon commanded one afternoon, blocking Miguel's access to his locker. "We want to see if you're even a real boy." Miguel clutched his gym bag tighter. "I need to get to math class." "Math can wait," Tyler said, cracking his knuckles. "We're conducting a biology experiment." Several other boys gathered around, forming a tight circle. Miguel felt the familiar combat assessment automatically cycling through his mind. 7 opponents, confined space, Damon leading, Tyler on the right flank as the primary threat. Jason behind me blocking the exit. "I don't want trouble," Miguel said, his accent thickening as it always did under stress. "Too bad," Damon replied, shoving him against the lockers. "Trouble found you the day you decided to come to our school." Miguel took the hit, absorbing the impact with his shoulder as he'd been trained. He could have countered with an elbow strike that would have shattered Damon's nose. Instead, he dropped his gym bag and raised his hands in surrender. "Please," he said. The mockery that followed was worse than the physical torment. They rifled through his gym bag, tossing his clothes into the shower and turning the water on. They took his phone and read his text messages aloud in exaggerated accents, howling, with laughter at the Spanish words they couldn't pronounce. When the bell rang, they left him there with soaking wet clothes and a warning, "Tomorrow will be worse." That night, Miguel sat on his bed, staring at the BJJ trophies his mother had proudly displayed on his dresser. His phone buzzed with a text from his father back in Puerto Rico. "How is school going, mijo? Making friends?" Miguel typed back a lie. "Everything is great. Don't worry." He couldn't tell his father the truth. His parents had sacrificed everything to send him to live with his aunt in the United States, believing he would have better opportunities here. His father was working double shifts to help support them. His mother had sold her wedding jewelry to help pay for the move. He couldn't disappoint them. The next day brought a new level of torment. Damon and his crew had escalated to tripping, Miguel in the hallway causing him to spill his books and papers everywhere. When he bent to pick them up, someone kicked him hard in the ribs, sending him sprawling. "Oops," Jason laughed. "Didn't see you down there. You're so small." By lunchtime, Miguel had resolved to eat outside behind the gym, where no one would find him. He was wrong. As he finished his sandwich on a concrete bench, shadows fell across him. "Look at the rat hiding in the corners to eat his cheese," Damon announced. This time, there were 5 of them. Damon, Jason, Tyler, and 2 other football players Miguel didn't know by name. "Please leave me alone," Miguel said, standing up and gathering his things. "What's that accent again?" "I can't understand a word you're saying," Damon mocked, stepping closer. "Maybe we should wash your mouth out, help you speak clearer." Before Miguel could react, Tyler and one of the other boys had grabbed his arms. They dragged him toward a muddy puddle that had formed after the morning rain. I could break free right now, Miguel thought. The hold they had on him was amateur at best. A simple wrist lock would have incapacitated Tyler, and a sweep would have taken down the other boy. But his father's words held him back. A true warrior avoids unnecessary battles. They shoved his face toward the dirty water. Miguel held his breath, allowing himself to be pushed down just enough to get muddy, but keeping his face above the water. When they finally released him, laughter echoing in his ears, he spit out a little mud and wiped his glasses on his sleeve. "Nothing to say, Miguelito," Damon taunted, clearly disappointed by the lack of tears or pleas. Miguel looked at him with steady eyes. "Why are you doing this?" The simple question seemed to catch Damon off guard. For a moment, something almost like shame flickered across his face. Then it hardened back into contempt. "Because I can," he answered, shoving Miguel down again before walking away. That afternoon in history class, Miguel noticed one person who wasn't laughing at his mud-stained clothes. Sophia Williams, a pretty junior with kind eyes who sat too, rose over, actually looked concerned. When the teacher stepped out for a moment, she leaned over. "Are you okay?" she whispered. Miguel nodded, surprised by the simple act of kindness. "Damon's a jerk," she continued. "He does this to someone new every year. Last year it was Marcus until they broke his arm." Miguel felt a chill. "They broke his arm?" Sophia nodded grimly. "It was an accident during gym class. Nobody did anything about it." Before she could say more, the teacher returned, and Sophia straightened in her seat. But she gave Miguel a small smile that stayed with him for the rest of the day. That night, Miguel called his father. He didn't tell him about the bullying, but he did ask, "Dad, how do you know when a battle is necessary?" There was a pause on the line. His father's voice was serious when he answered, "When you have tried every peaceful path and none remain. When walking away means abandoning your dignity or safety. When others who cannot defend themselves might be harmed if you don't act." Another pause. "Mijo, is something happening I should know about?" "No, Dad," Miguel lied again. "Just something we discussed in ethics class." That night, he dreamed of the mats back home, of the discipline and respect that permeated his dojo. He woke up feeling homesick and afraid of what the new day would bring. The next morning, Miguel found his locker vandalized with crude drawings and slurs. As he tried to clean it off, he felt someone watching him. Turning, he saw Marcus observing from a distance, his own arm bearing the faint remnants of a healed fracture. "It only gets worse," Marcus said quietly, "until they find someone else. Or until someone stands up to them," Miguel replied, surprising himself with the thought. Marcus laughed bitterly. "Good luck with that. Even the teachers are afraid of Damon's dad." As the days passed, the torment escalated. In chemistry class, someone, almost certainly Jason, knocked a beaker of foul-smelling chemicals onto Miguel's lap. In the library, his backpack mysteriously fell from the second-floor balcony into a decorative fountain below. Each incident chipped away at his resolve to keep the peace. One afternoon, Miguel stayed late to work on a science project. He'd strategically planned to use the lab when no one else would be around. As he carefully measured chemicals for his experiment, he heard the door open behind him. Well, look who's playing mad scientist." Damon's voice sent a jolt of adrenaline through Miguel's system. Miguel kept his eyes on his work. "I'm almost done. The lab will be all yours in 5 minutes. "That's not how this works," Damon said, stepping closer. Jason and Tyler flanked him as usual, plus 2 other boys Miguel recognized from the football team. "You don't decide when you're done. We do." Miguel carefully put down the beaker he was holding. He counted the exits. Just one door, blocked by Damon and his crew. The windows were too high and small to provide an escape. 5 opponents. Confined space, no witnesses. "What do you want?" Miguel asked, managing to keep his voice steady. "Entertainment," Damon replied with a cruel smile. "And you're going to provide it." He gestured to Jason, who pulled out his phone and started recording. "We're going to make a little video of you begging us not to hurt you, maybe crying a little. If it goes viral enough, maybe you'll be famous back in whatever third world hole you crawled out of." Miguel felt something shift inside him. A line was being crossed. "I won't do that," he said quietly. Damon's eyebrows shot up in mock surprise. "He speaks, and with such defiance." He looked at his friends. "I think Miguelito needs to learn his place in the food chain." They advanced on him together. Miguel backed up until he hit the lab counter. Tyler grabbed his arm, twisting it painfully behind his back, a crude approximation of a submission hold that any white belt could have escaped from. Miguel let it happen, still holding back. "Say it," Damon demanded, getting in Miguel's face. "Say, 'I'm a dirty immigrant who doesn't belong here,' in your funny little accent." Miguel met his eyes and said nothing. The slap across his face was meant to humiliate rather than hurt. The phone camera recorded everything. Miguel felt his cheeks sting and tasted blood where his tooth had cut the inside of his mouth. "I said, 'Say it,'" Damon demanded again, his voice rising. "No," Miguel replied simply. What followed was a blur of pushing, shoving, and escalating violence. They tore his science project apart. They dumped chemicals on his books. They took turns shoving him around the room like a human pinball. Throughout it all, Miguel absorbed the attacks, using his training to minimize the damage without revealing his skills. Then Damon grabbed Miguel's glasses and snapped them in half. "Oops," he said with a malicious grin. "Now how will the little nerd see?" The world became slightly blurred around the edges, but Miguel could still see well enough to notice Jason putting the phone down to join in the fun, well enough to see the dangerous gleam in Damon's eyes as he whispered something to the others. They grabbed Miguel by the arms and legs. "Let's take him for a ride," Damon announced. They carried him, struggling just enough to seem afraid but not enough to break free, out of the lab and down the hall. Miguel realized where they were headed, the second-floor balcony that overlooked the school's main entrance foyer. His heart rate increased, but his mind remained calm, assessing. They were actually going to try to throw him over. "This is it," he thought. "This is the necessary battle." As they reached the balcony and began to lift him toward the railing, Miguel made his decision. With precise movements honed through thousands of practice hours, he executed a perfect wrist lock on Tyler, who immediately released his arm with a yelp of pain. In the same fluid motion, Miguel twisted his body, breaking the grip of the second. boy holding his arm. What the? Damon began, but Miguel was already moving. His foot swept Jason's legs from under him, sending him crashing to the floor. The fourth boy received an open palm strike to the solar plexus that left him gasping for air. The fifth backed away in shock, hands raised defensively. Damon, still holding Miguel's legs, couldn't process what was happening fast enough. Miguel executed a core movement that propelled his upper body upward, bringing him face to face with his tormentor. "Let go," Miguel said calmly. Damon's grip tightened. "You little—" Miguel struck with surgical precision, not to the face, not to cause lasting damage, but to the pressure points on Damon's wrists that instantly forced his fingers to open. Free from all restraints, Miguel landed gracefully on his feet while Damon stumbled backward in shock. The corridor fell silent. Tyler was clutching his wrist, Jason was still on the floor looking dazed, and the others were frozen in disbelief. Damon's face contorted with rage and humiliation. "You're dead," he growled, charging at Miguel like a bull. What happened next became Westridge High legend. Students would later recall seeing a blur of movement, hearing a shocked gasp from the small crowd that had gathered, and then witnessing the impossible. Damon Reynolds, star quarterback and untouchable king of the school, flat on his back, completely. Immobilized by the small foreign kid, nobody had given a second glance. Miguel had him in a perfect submission hold, controlling but not damaging, threatening but not harmful. His technique was flawless, his movements so smooth they seemed choreographed. He leaned close to Damon's ear. "I could break your arm right now," he said softly, his accent suddenly seeming more dignified than comical. "I could dislocate your shoulder. I could cut off the blood flow to your brain until you pass out. But I won't because I'm not like you. I don't hurt people to feel powerful." Damon struggled beneath him, his face turning red with exertion and shame. "Get off me, you freak." Miguel applied the slightest additional pressure, causing Damon to gasp in pain. "Listen carefully," he continued, his voice still quiet, but now carrying an undeniable authority. "This ends today. You will never touch me again. You will never touch Marcus again. You will never target another student at this school. If you do, I won't be this merciful next time." From his position on the floor, Damon glared up with hatred, and for the first time fear. "You think this changes anything? My father will have you expelled by tomorrow." Miguel smiled slightly. "Maybe. But first, everyone will know what happened here. Everyone will know that you and your friends tried to throw me over a balcony, and I took all 5 of you down without even breaking a sweat." He nodded toward Jason's phone, which was still recording from where it had been placed on a nearby bench. "Including that video you so kindly made." Jason lunged for the phone, but a new voice stopped him. "I wouldn't touch that if I were you." Sophia Williams stepped forward from the crowd, her own phone held up. "I've been recording everything since you dragged him out of the lab. One wrong move, and this goes straight to the police and the local news." Miguel released Damon and stood up, straightening his torn shirt with dignity. The other boys backed away, helping Damon to his feet. For a moment, the two groups faced each other in tense silence. It was Tyler who broke first. "Dude, what the hell was that?" he demanded, still nursing his wrist. "Where did you learn to fight like that?" "I'm a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu blue belt," Miguel replied simply. "I've been training since I was 6. "Why didn't you ever fight back before?" Jason asked, genuinely confused. Miguel looked at him steadily. "Because my father taught me that fighting is only for when you have no other choice." He gestured toward the balcony railing. "You just eliminated all my other choices." Damon, recovered enough to speak, pointed a shaking finger at Miguel. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is," came another voice. Everyone turned to see Principal Winters standing at the end of the hallway, arms crossed. "My office, all of you, now." The next few hours were a blur of explanations, accusations, and revelations. Jason's video, which captured their initial assault in the lab, and Sophia's recording of the balcony incident provided incontrovertible evidence of what had transpired. When Damon's father arrived, blustering with threats of lawsuits and demands for Miguel's expulsion, Principal Winters calmly played both videos for him. The color drained from Mr. Reynolds' face as he watched his son and his friends attempt to throw another student over a balcony. "Damon," he said, his voice strained, "what have you done?" For the first time, Damon seemed to grasp the severity of his actions. He looked down, unable to meet his father's eyes. Mr. Reynolds turned to Miguel and his aunt, who had been called to the school. I don't know what to say. I'm so sorry. This is inexcusable." To Principal Winters, he added, "Whatever punishment you deem appropriate, I will support, and if you wish to involve the police, I understand." In the end, Damon, Jason, and Tyler were suspended for 2 weeks, with community service requirements and mandatory counseling sessions. The other two boys received shorter suspensions. Miguel, having acted in self-defense, faced no disciplinary action. As they left the principal's office, Mr. Reynolds approached Miguel once more. "You showed remarkable restraint," he said quietly. "You could have seriously hurt my son, and no one would have blamed you." He extended his hand. "Thank you for that mercy." Miguel shook his hand solemnly. "I was not trained to hurt. I was trained to protect myself and others." The change at Westridge High was immediate and dramatic. Word of what had happened spread like wildfire. By the next morning, everyone knew that the quiet Puerto Rican kid had single-handedly defeated 5 attackers using martial arts skills no one had suspected. Miguel's relationship with his peers transformed overnight. Students who had previously ignored him now greeted him in the hallways. Those who had whispered about his accent now asked him to teach them Spanish phrases. Even some teachers looked at him with newfound respect. Most surprising was the change in his former tormentors. Jason approached him in the cafeteria when they returned from suspension, awkwardly apologizing and asking if Miguel would consider teaching him some basic self-defense moves. Tyler acknowledged him with a respectful nod whenever they passed in the hallways. Only Damon maintained his distance, his humiliation apparent in the way he avoided Miguel's gaze. But the malice was gone, replaced by a wary acceptance of the new order. Miguel found himself with an unexpected circle of friends. Sophia began sitting with him at lunch, bringing along her own friends who were curious about the boy who had stood up to Damon Reynolds. Marcus and Ellie remained loyal companions, their quiet corner table now becoming a popular spot. "You should start a club," Marcus suggested one day. "Teach us what you know." The idea took root. With Principal Winter's enthusiastic approval, the incident had made her acutely aware of the bullying problems she had previously overlooked. Miguel established an after-school Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu club. To his surprise, more than 20 students showed up for the first session, including several who had once stood by and watched his torment. "The first rule of Jiu-Jitsu," he told them, standing tall at the front of the gym, his accent no longer something to hide, "is respect for yourself, for your training partners, for your teachers, and for the art itself. The second rule is that we never use these skills to bully or intimidate others. We train to become stronger so we can protect those who cannot protect themselves." In the months that followed, Miguel watched his students grow not just in technique but in confidence and character. Kids who had been bullied began walking taller. Those who had been bystanders learned the courage to intervene when they witnessed injustice. Even a few former bullies found a healthier channel for their energy and aggression. One afternoon, as Miguel was demonstrating a technique, he noticed Damon standing in the doorway of the gym, watching. Their eyes met across the room. After a moment's hesitation, Damon nodded, not quite friendly but with a recognition that hadn't been there before. Then he turned and walked away. That evening, Miguel video-called his father. This time, he told him everything, the bullying, the final confrontation, and the changes that had followed. His father listened in silence, his expression growing grave. When Miguel finished, he asked, "Were you afraid, mijo?" Miguel considered the question. "Yes," he admitted. "Not of getting hurt, but of disappointing you if I fought back too soon, or of becoming like them if I enjoyed it too much." His father's face softened with pride. "You understood my teachings better than I could have hoped. A true warrior knows not just how to fight, but when to fight and, most importantly, why to fight." He leaned closer to the camera. "I am proud of you, Miguel. Not because you won a battle, but because you won it the right way." As the school year progressed, Westridge High slowly transformed. The hierarchy that had protected bullies began to crumble as more students found their voices and their courage. Principal Winters implemented new anti-bullying policies with actual consequences. Teachers who had once looked the other way now intervened when they witnessed troubling behavior. Miguel sometimes caught glimpses of his reflection in the school's hallway mirrors and barely recognized himself. His shoulders were back, his chin was up, and his eyes met those of others with quiet confidence. His accent, which he had tried so hard to hide, was now just another part of who he was, neither emphasized nor minimized. On the last day of school, as students signed each other's yearbooks, Sophia handed Miguel a small package. "What's this?" he asked, surprised. "Open it," she urged. Inside was a custom t-shirt with a simple motto printed across the chest. "Choose your battles wisely, but when the battle chooses you, be ready." Miguel smiled, recognizing his father's wisdom reframed in new words. "Thank you," he said, genuinely touched. "No," Sophia replied, squeezing his hand. "Thank you for showing everyone that sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one you should fear most and respect most." As Miguel packed up his locker for the summer, he found a note slipped through the vents. The handwriting was unfamiliar, the message unsigned, but he knew instantly who it was from. "You were right, it is over, and maybe that's for the best." He folded the note carefully and put it in his pocket, a final confirmation that even the deepest wounds could begin to heal when brave souls stood their ground. Not with hatred or a desire for revenge, but with the unshakable conviction that everyone deserved dignity and respect, including themselves. That night, Miguel added a new trophy to his shelf, not one made of metal and marble, but the Westridge High Yearbook, open to the page where he had been voted most inspirational student. Beside it, he placed the broken halves of his old glasses, a reminder of the moment when he had finally seen clearly.